Hello, Dr. Philipa. Thank you so much for accepting to be a host on my YouTube channel. Hi, everybody. My name is Beatrice, and you're watching Beatrice with AfriSend, all about the diaspora and transitions and family. And today we are so honored to have Dr. Philipa, who I'm so excited to meet again. Dr. Philipa, how are you?
I am well, thank you. Nice to meet you too.
Dr. Philipa, who are you? What makes your heart beat? What do you wake up looking forward to in the morning?
Okay.
Yeah.
My name is Philipa Msoke.
Yes.
I'm a pediatrician by choice. That's what I say. Because I love children.
I like that.
But I'm also a researcher. Yeah. I do HIV research, which I've done for the last 27 plus years.
Yes.
At Makerere University, John Hopkins Research Collaboration.
Nice.
But I also was based, I retired last year from Makerere University, Department of Pediatrics and Childhood.
Wow, it's amazing. It's funny because I've taught Sunday school since I was 13. I said I was in Sunday school, they chased me away, and then I came back as a teacher.
Yes, yes.
But when I transitioned to the US, I thought about being a pediatric nurse. And one of my mentors actually discouraged me. She said, no, most people have just one child, and you're treating both the parent and the child. Do you find that every time you have to work with a baby, you actually also have to treat the family, the adult in their life? I won't say mother, because in Uganda, we have child-headed families, we have aunties, jajas. How have you felt that dynamic, you know?
It's actually complicated.
It is.
Because you're not just dealing with the one patient, you're dealing with the family, especially the mother.
Yes.
And I've taught for a long time, so I always tell students, the mother is the most important person.
Yes.
And whatever she says is right, until you can prove she's wrong. Because she's the one who's staying with the baby all the time, or the child all the time. But it's also, I've noticed that some parents become very defensive, and you have to support them through that time, especially if you have a chronically ill child.
Yes.
So it's not easy. And as we say in Africa or in Uganda, you know, the child is raised by a village. So it's the whole extended family as well.
Well, did you practice pediatrics both? Because I know part of why we're doing this interview is that transition, because you transitioned from Uganda to the US, and then transitioned from the US back to Uganda. So did you practice pediatrics in the US and in Uganda, and how different was that? If somebody's out there and they're thinking, I need to transition somehow in my career. Should I stay in that same line of work, or should I? What's the difference? How did you feel?
Well, I think pediatrics is fulfilling wherever you're doing it. I was in Uganda, I did medical school, I did part of my postgraduate in pediatrics, and I loved it. And then I transitioned to the US, but the US I was mainly studying. So I was a resident or a postgraduate, and then I was also a fellow. And so I was practicing pediatrics, but as a resident. You had supervisors above you. So when I transitioned back, it was different, because now I was the consultant, and yet I'd just been a fellow, where I had other people to ask, other people to check with. So it was a big difference. But in terms of taking care of sick children, it's the same issue. Children don't lie. They're sick, they're sick. They're well, they're well. And I always say, when they're well and they're smiling, you know you've made progress. And it really makes my heart so glad when I see a little kid who's been sick and now you figured out what's wrong and they get better. But then there's also a lot of chronic illnesses. At the time I started pediatrics, there was no HIV. So I did infectious diseases thinking, you know, I can look at infections. But then they became HIV. And that is really traumatic and painful, especially before we had access to treatment. There's obviously cancer as well, which is very painful when you see children suffering and dying. But you know, I'm a believer, and I believe in Christ, that He puts me there for a purpose, and I can do my part. I do know that when I transitioned back, I was overwhelmed, and I felt I'm not doing enough. You know, I'm only saving 1 or 2, 3 children on the wards, or 10 or 20, and yet the whole world is full of sick kids or Ugandan. And the Lord reminded me that it's that one particular child, it's 100%. So I was able to calm down and say, let me do my part. As long as I do the part, I'm doing 100% for this individual child.
Did you find, I remember doing my final year, as I think I was doing maybe it was my internship. We had some American students who are in their 4th year coming, and one of my friends, Bruno, he's now an anesthesiologist, but he had a moment where he just paused because he said it was overwhelming. Should somebody planning to come practice in Uganda kind of be intentional about that, just pausing, because it's different if you're looking for gloves and looking for this, and it's access to this and access that. Should they plan for that moment where they pause?
That is a very good way. I've never thought of it that way, but pause is needed because the contexts are so different. I think the whole time I was in the US, I may have lost 2 children who are not cancer patients. And then I get here and children die every single day, and you're just turning around like this and another child dies and you're trying to treat this one. So you have to pause and say, I'm committed to deal with circumstances which are less than perfect. Because you know what to do, but sometimes you can't do it. And then the question comes, as you said, residents would come from abroad and they're wondering why we're not running around taking care of every child. You have a child and you're trying to do cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR, for half an hour. The child's not coming back. And you have a line of 10 children who are seizing, who are what? Who need care. So pausing helps you to think, what are the priorities? What am I supposed to do? What can I do? And what can't I do? What can I change? And what can't
I change? And to have peace about what you can't change. Because, I mean, who takes care of the physicians? Because you take care of us all the time. So who takes care of you? And you did mention you're a woman of faith. I remember meeting you at the Medical Dental Mission as a group of volunteers who are medical students, doctors, nurses, dentists, who go to far off in Uganda every month. And I remember meeting you there, but your faith, because part of my transition to the US, Boston, and then to Cali right now where I am, was the church. Like when you transitioned, did you think about, I should plan to find a church? How did that look like? Because for me, I'm thinking, okay, I want to transition back. Which church should I be a part of? And not just in that sense of attending, but also plugging in. Because right now on the West Coast, I'm part of a church. We go to church, but I haven't fully plugged in. And so that transition as well, like how does it look like, and how does it tie into that transition? What would you?
I think going to the US is always different because you find churches and they're also very cultural. There's the black churches, the white churches, the Presbyterian, the Pentecostal. So again, you have to say, what is it I want to achieve? And you visit a couple of churches till you find the church you're comfortable in, where you can serve rather than just sit on the pew. But when you come back, you also need to make the decision which church you want. Because Uganda now, when we were medical students, there are like 3 main churches. Church of Uganda, Full Gospel, and maybe the one other Deliverance Church. But now there are 100, and 100 is a certain number. There are a million churches. So you got to decide, what do you believe, and what do you want to be able to contribute to in terms of your Christian ministry, and where do you want your family to also grow up in. There are a lot of churches teaching a lot of things. So if you don't know what you want to achieve, what you want to be, and where you want Christ to teach you and others, for you to teach others, you can get lost. But you have to say, okay, I came back and just went back to the church where I was before I went to the US. I must say it also wasn't easy, because all the people I was with had moved on. Their families were now different, the children had grown. So it was a transition, but because it was a church I'd grown up in, I knew people in the church. I also was really into teaching Sunday school, so I joined teaching Sunday school, which I loved. Actually, one of the colleagues is one who encouraged me, said, hey, come and teach Sunday school. I know you like children. So I slowly eased into it. Because when I was in the US, I didn't do a lot of ministry, I must say.
It's intense. Med school in the US is intense. Because I've been told some of the residents, there are times you're on call for like 24 hours. And because people think they watch like Grey's Anatomy. And they're like, it's just a movie. No, it's real life. People stay in the hospital non-stop.
And for us, they now put a rule that you don't work more than 18 hours. For us, we used to do 36 hours. So you'd go one day, you'd work all day, all night, the whole day next day, and leave at 4 or 5, depending on when you'd finish your work. I tell you, you'd get home and you're finished.
You're done. Just want to sleep. All in the bed. What's your plan for the weekend? Sleep.
Yes, that's what I used to say. I want to sleep. Where are you going? Are you going to do something fun?
No.
I'm like, no, I want to sleep.
That's all you plan for. Now, transitioning back, but like personally, I have a small family. I have a young family, a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and my spouse. How would you advise young people to plan for that transition back? Because there are questions, should we build a house first, have a garden, and then move? should one of us get a job and then the other does the business? Because most people want to transition back to entrepreneurship and are afraid to being employed, taking a salary cut, following different rules, fitting into a different culture. Because I always say, like, if you have to have a presentation, you'll be here an hour early, you have the projector, you check the projector, your slides are looking good. And in Uganda, that is not going to happen.
Understand it very well.
So I have a cousin who just came back, she's been here now, I think 6 months. She did law, and she's like, oh my goodness. I said, calm down. Welcome home.
Yes, welcome home.
How would you speak to that, transitioning as a family, and then just planning financially? Are there some fundamentals that need to be in place? Decisions about schools before we make that jump to come?
I think you need to make those decisions for sure, prayerfully, and make the decisions ahead of time. Save up a little money.
Okay.
Don't just come and fly in the deep end. Some people do it, and the Lord blesses them.
Yeah.
But I would plan a little bit of saving, at least living allowance.
Okay.
It's on a little lower level than you have been before, for at least 6 months or a year, depending on how much you can save.
Okay.
So when you come, if you don't have a job right away, you can at least live off your small allowance until you find a job. The other thing that some people do is one of the partners to come and find a job, stabilize, and then also set up the home. I mean, I think if you want to wait until you build a house, until you build a lusuku, it may take you a bit long.
Forever, yes.
Because unless you're a multimillionaire, it's hard to do all those things.
Save up, yes.
Especially if you want to come back when the children are still young.
Yes.
If you want to come when the children are 20, 30, then you can wait.
Yeah.
You put up your house, you put up your building, you put up your lusuku, you do your business and come and just dive in as a retirement.
Yes.
But if you want to come and nurture your young family, then you have to plan. First of all, you have to be in agreement, the two of you, otherwise it can lead to problems.
Yes.
And then as you come, you've saved up a little money. One of you should say, I'm going to go first and prepare. It can be the wife, it can be the husband, whoever feels like they have their niche, where they know where they're going, where they can plan ahead, so that when the family comes, they're not really flying off the deep end and drowning. The other thing which really helps is having family.
Yes.
And obviously a church. But family, your biological family, really contributes. If you have people, you can even stay with some of your siblings. It depends how close you are. Some people can't stay with their siblings, with the in-laws and everybody. But if you have siblings you can stay with, it sometimes helps as you adjust, that you're staying with somebody for maybe 3 to 6 months as you sort yourself out, because when you left, is the window market still there? Is this road going left or right? And then also recognizing that the standard you may have been living in the US is not
air
going to be the same.
conditioning in your car.
It's not going to be the same.
True.
And yet you can build it up to get there.
Yes.
But it'll take a while.
It will take a while. You can build it up to get there, but it will take a while. I think that's the element that we might, like that pace. How fast should we be moving is what we don't. Well, one last question. I know we are short of time, but in terms of career, if somebody is planning to transition back, should they apply, interview, and then come and move to a job? Should they just move and then work and hand in their resumes? How would you advise for somebody transitioning career-wise back to the developing countries?
I think career-wise, I would recommend, and it's just my personal preference, that you try an interview.
Yes.
Get your CV out there. Now things are so much easier online. The times we came back, it was like, I sent my documents to Makerere, 20 copies. When I got here, they were lost. So, you had to start again. But now people are more organized. You can send your documents, you can apply for an interview, you can do online interviews, so that you move when you have a job in an area that you want to be in, especially if you're in health. There are a lot of opportunities now in health. You can do clinical work, you can do public health work, you can do administrative work. There's research. There are a lot of opportunity, policy guidance. So the opportunities are many, and I think they're open for you to look at and see where you think your niche is and where you want to fit. Some people change and just say, no, I'm going home, but I'm going to do something different from what I'm doing. And I think I would do the interviews. If people are willing to have you do online interviews, that would be good. Or you can say, I'm going to go home for this period of